Moramai, good morning everybody. So I'm going to start with a bit of humour before I start my presentation. So last night I had a message pop up on my phone, and I have been welcomed to the Isle of Man, it's been great, and it said, welcome to the Isle of Man, and anybody knows on your Facebook or your Instagram messages, it just gives you a highlight. And then it said, from another message, I've seen you've been working out, Andy. And I'm like, oh, my life. But then it was like, another friend, easy peasy, what's there not to like about this? And then this is amazing. And I'm thinking, what is this about? So anyway, when I got back home, I went onto my Facebook page and I saw this. Me. So I now know Save It Ralph's. So I hope I live up to those expectations, but I just thought I'd start with a bit of humour. So, anyway, I thought I'd start by setting out some of the key challenges that we face across the public sector. And the first thing to say, it's not really, our challenges are not dissimilar to what we're seeing globally, across many sectors, but it's our ability to respond and look at new ways of working and how we fundamentally reform the public sector over the next few years. And I think those will require bold decisions, it requires fundamental change, and making sure that we can continue to deliver for our communities and business. And one thing I've found is the Isle of Man's constitution is unique in many ways. We have our own identity, our own culture, a national government that delivers a vast range of services, and many that often would be devolved to other parts of the public sector family, or indeed to the private sector. And alongside that, we mustn't forget that we have 21 local authorities with their own roles and responsibilities, serving a population of just over 84,000 people. So in terms of key challenges, the public sector really needs to focus on strengthening our governance, leadership. We've talked a lot about financial discipline. And one issue that we are going to have to get to grips with is around public sector pay. And what I say about that is above inflation pay awards just aren't sustainable for the future. We're also having to deal with the post-COVID era, the recent economic shocks and the impacts that that has on our wider finances. Alongside this, rising costs to deliver services. We've already talked about the healthcare service, housing provision. The cost of housing for some remains a real challenge. So looking at our housing needs assessment and how we provide housing in the future will be really important. And as we know, whether we live on the Isle of Man or further afield, the confidence in the public service and the outcomes that our communities want remains a real challenge. So, of course, like any public service, there are a number of other challenges that are affecting us. We're all getting older, that includes me, and that results in additional pressure on all of our services. We have a really diversifying population, and they have different needs and demands. And what it was like today, even following COVID 10, 20, or even 30 years ago, doing more of the same is just not likely to be sustainable for the future without raising more revenue. Weather, which is a bit of a strange one, but being in an island means we have to be more resilient. Connectivity, food security, housing, all likely to require significant investment in the future. And then, as the Treasury Minister has said, economic uncertainty, international conflict, inflation, interest rates, all very unpredictable, and they have a real impact to our capital programs and the cost of delivering our public services. So hopefully you're familiar with the island plan. It sets out 6 strategic priorities, and it is the public service's role to deliver these and to deliver the outcomes that the island needs. The first one around financial discipline, so delivering a balanced budget is non-negotiable. And we know that we've got challenges, but we must try to get to a balanced position as possible, and that is something I'll come on to in a little while. Our economy, we have to make sure our economy is thriving. We need to support business, make sure jobs are filled. Importantly, having the right skills on the island and making sure that everybody can contribute to our economy. And our housing needs, we need to respond to housing needs. As I said, we have a housing needs assessment, and we need to work out who is best to provide housing in the future, and we hope to bring forward a business case for a housing association by the end of this financial year. Connectivity, well, we heard a lot about connectivity yesterday. You know, we have to make sure that we are resilient as possible. You know, just air traffic control, you heard from Gary yesterday, but we're competing for resources worldwide. And the nature of the routes and being a small island means that we have to provide subvention to make sure that we can secure those routes. But obviously, as I said before, the weather affects us, and we have to look at new ways to mitigate some of those risks moving forwards. We need to make sure that we've got the right policies in place for residency, migration, security, and we're currently looking at incentives and disincentives, and you'll be hearing more about that later. And then finally, I'd just like to say a little bit about energy and making sure that we are looking to the future and what our energy needs are and energy security, and we're making really steady and great progress around our onshore and offshore wind capability, and we hope that planning applications for those will come forward early part of next year. So a bit more about the public service. So the public service is one of the major employers on the island. We employ about just over 20% of the working age population. And therefore it's our responsibility, my responsibility, that we deliver value for money for our communities. And it is a complex organisation, I would say sometimes misunderstood as well. However, this year we've been focused very much about getting back on track. The organisation, like many of our communities, is still recovering from the impacts of recent years. So in the last 12 months, we've been really focused on 4 priority areas. Obviously focusing on our people, making sure we're getting the basics right, making sure we've got robust performance management in place, that managers having conversations with the staff. Sometimes easier said than done, but really a real focus on our people across the public sector. Obviously focusing on the money, making sure that we've got cost improvement plans and savings plans in place, and we've got robust financial management and scrutiny of the budgets, which the Treasury Minister has already focused on. Delivery, we always want to deliver more, and you know, our politicians always want more, you always want more, but we can't do everything. And so having to prioritise what's important, moving resources around is really key, and making sure we've got the right capacity and capability to deliver those ambitions of the island plan is important. And then focusing on the size of the public service, something I'll expand on in a moment, but just making sure that we are making sure we've got the right people in the right place, and that, of course, we're helping. This is helping us stick to our financial goals. Alongside this, we've got a new operational performance board, and that's supporting myself, the wider executive, to drive change and transformation. I'm sure will be key as we look at where we make efficiencies for the future. And as mentioned in the Chief Minister's speech yesterday, the Chief Officer Group will now need to develop plans for a minimum of £10 million savings. We've actually started those conversations. We're already delivering efficiencies, but we'll be more transparent about how we do that and where we do that. But this will really be achieved through having a stronger corporate centre, more digitisation, and smarter procurement, and importantly, how we deliver services to our communities moving forwards. And I think we appreciate that, you know, it takes time to modernise a big organisation of over 9,000 people, but you know, we will start that journey, and we are starting that journey, have been starting that journey, and we will continue on that journey as we move forward. So, moving into a bit more detail around the size and structure of government. So I know there's been a lot of public sentiment about how big the public service is, and that we continue to grow in numbers. And I know the Chief Minister in June made a commitment that we would look into the detail of this, and try and share what the numbers and where the numbers sit across government. And work is well underway in this space. The difficulty in reporting, and this isn't an excuse, is that the methods of collecting data across different agencies, departments, is slightly different. And getting to one version of the truth is often a real challenge. But please be assured we are making progress in that, and we are looking at how that data is presented. But it's fair to say over the term of this administration, significant investment has already gone into the areas that the Treasury Minister has already highlighted: Manx Care, human resources, combating financial crime, and a number of frontline services. And therefore that has resulted in more people working for us. And there are times of year when it appears that the numbers actually go up. But we have a lot of people also who work seasonally for us. We also have a number of bank staff, as an example, that might hold 0 hours contracts, and they might have 4 contracts, and those are counted as individuals. So it is a complex picture across the public service. And that in turn looks like sometimes the numbers are slightly inflated. The new people strategy that I'll come on to later looks at the need, or the greater need of us to look at staffing establishments, the spans of layers of management in government, so we can deliver a cost-effective public service, and one that is affordable. So in summary, the plan around headcount and recruitment more generally, and reporting of the numbers, will be, by the end of the year, we will report on the size of government quarterly, publicly. We'll provide a clear narrative, so there's a clear understanding as to why numbers go up or even down. We'll break the numbers down into boards, departments, and offices, so you can see where those changes are made. And departments, as they do already, will continue to have robust recruitment controls in place. So in terms of the in-year focus, we're already dealing with extremely tight budgets. So each department has its own unique financial pressures, some that can be controlled, some that frankly can't be controlled. And many of the services that we provide are demand-led, and obviously as demand goes up, cost goes up. It's quite a simple equation. But this year we are having to take measures to support us getting to a balanced position. And although we're still forecasting an overspend, there are robust plans in place to minimise them the best we can. And I am pleased to say that we are in an improving picture to last year. The modernisation of government services is very much focused on digital and our digital capabilities. Departments are already working through this, but we know we've got a lot more to do. And subject to funding in the next few weeks, we will start to redesign our website GovIM and also seek further opportunities for online services. AI moving forwards, we all know, will have an important part to play, and I'll come on to the digital strategy in a moment. Cost improvement plans that the departments have obviously linked to what the Treasury Minister talked about, having financial discipline in departments. But obviously, if we're not able to do this in its entirety, some departments will have more pressures than others, then we will have to intervene and implement other measures for the remaining part of this year. So, a bit more about the Sustainable Public Services Programme. So obviously reforming the way we work is really critical. I mentioned before the world has changed. What was it like 5 years, 10, 20, 30 years? And we're in a completely different place now. I've set out and commissioned four strategies that we need to look at and develop. And as I said earlier, we can't expect to do more of the same and expect different outcomes. So these four strategies are there to drive change to how we deliver services and how we work internally. And we hope to have these published by Q2 next year. And this really will set out the way we work in the future across the public sector. It will deliver cost savings, and modernise our approach to service delivery. In terms of our people strategy, we need to make sure, obviously, clearly, being a small island, that we can retain and attract the right skills and capabilities, and there needs to be a real focus on talent management within the public sector. So moving people, through the organisation into management and leadership roles must be our starting point. We need to look at the way that we work. So having an agreement around what flexible and home working looks like. This is very much linked to our corporate accommodation strategy. Do we need all the buildings that we've got at the moment? Do we get more people working from home? There has to be a balance, I accept, but working flexibly is going to be really important in the future. And my children will expect to work flexibly in the future. So we do have to change the way that we work and how we work across the public sector. Developing our people, management, leadership, reward and recognition, equalities and diversity, policies and procedures. And then finally, spans and layers across government. I think we've heard a conversation around, or comment that we have too many management layers across government. We will need to look at that and make sure that whatever we agree with in the future, it's consistent across the piece. Our customer strategy, so making sure that departments have a framework that they can work towards, looking at the channels at how people and customers access our services, where they can access them from, and ensure that we're really looking to the future. And then really being better at joining the dots, being able to share more data across the organisation and making that whole customer experience easier. The digital strategy, so really about driving behaviour change both in the community and the organisation at large, how we and communities support those who are digitally excluded, the role in AI to drive efficiency across the public sector, and data management so we can drive better decision making and insight when we're trying to look at other strategies or other initiatives, whether that's saving money or providing services. We need to be better at data. And then finally, corporate accommodation. We have a large estate. We need to look at the entire estate, the condition of the estate, and making sure that we've got money and able to maintain it moving forwards. The size, the location, the standards that we work in the future, it links to new ways of working, but we do need to, for the accommodation we do have, that needs to be fit for purpose now and in the future. And then finally, disposal and investment, what we invest in and what we dispose of moving forwards. So, there we go, right. So just finally, so I've set out sort of 4 key strategies. The next part really is a much bigger piece of work. And we do have to think about government, reforming government, and how we might be structured in the future. And there have been, since I've been here, I've read many reviews of the future shape and size of government. I think the first was in 1984, if I remember correctly. But as the Chief Minister has said, I'm going to bring forward with colleagues a range of options to consider moving forwards. A few of those reviews have looked at a single legal entity, for those of you familiar with that, with a single accounting officer. And the most recent report from Sir John Elvidge in 2014, and actually in 2015, a public consultation was launched on that subject and found that 74% of those who took part were in favour of the approach. However, what I would say is this isn't the only golden bullet to change the way that government is structured. And even if that was accepted, it would take years and years and years to implement at some quite significant cost. But alongside this, and as I said before, the future role of local government, how that is organised, how it best supports communities moving forwards, and having a real focus on driving efficiency, value for money, the continuity of service for the whole island must be our key objective for the longer term. So, as I said, a range of options to take forwards, but before we can even get there, I think we've got a number of questions that we need to answer. The first is, what are we trying to resolve? Moving the deck chairs doesn't always just resolve the problem. So we've got to be really clear what we're going to resolve and what's best for the communities of the Isle of Man. Just because it works somewhere else doesn't mean it's going to work here. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach. What services do we deliver? Who's best to provide them in the future? Who pays for what? What are the levels of service that are affordable, acceptable? And how do we then best organise ourselves in the future to be more efficient? So it's really important now that we start to continue to engage and listen to the community. I think we do a lot of consultation. We put out lots of consultation documents, but having that broader conversation will be really important. I'm sure there's an opportunity through roadshows, which I thought was a great success with the Council of Ministers, is another time to engage outside of the conference. And we must explore those range of options. There's no point of avoiding it, and we need to come to an agreement what we do or don't do moving forwards. Finally, the world around us has changed. The cost of providing services has increased. So just doing more of the same, frankly, is not sustainable either in the short, medium or longer term. And I call it sort of the new normal. So I think now is the time, that we all take stock and agree how we provide, really effective public services moving forwards. And one that you can all be proud of. Thank you. So I'm happy to take questions. I wasn't billed for questions, but I thought it was a bit strange if you couldn't ask the Chief Exec some questions. So I think there's going to be roaming mics in the room. I think we'll do it for, how long have I got, roughly? If I want 20, sorry? How long have I got? 10? 10 minutes or? Okay, right, okay. So, question with this gentleman over here.
Thank you very much, Andy. That was very interesting. And from the general public point of view, the simple question would be, why do we have ministers? It seems that everything you put out there is exactly the same as the Chief Minister. Your tenure, I take it, is going to be longer than the 2 years left to run for this administration. Is that correct?
I'll be here more than 2 years.
So you'll be able to follow all these guidelines through, all these ideals, and bring them to reality.
So, I mean, there is the role of ministers is really important. So ministers set out, the direction of travel. They make the decisions, and it's for the civil service then to deliver those ambitions. It's my role to make sure that we've got an effective public service that is working for the island and for the ministers and MHKs across the island. Thank you. Okay, sorry, I see you there.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
In light of the recent tribunal with Dr. Anson, has anybody been held accountable from public servants regarding what happened to her and the taxpayer cost as a result of all of that? And moving forward, how will public servants be held accountable for any future instances? Thank you.
So those matters have been dealt with internally. It's not for me to talk about the HR processes that followed. All I can say is that we do have to learn the lessons from the Ranson Tribunal. There, like any large organisation, an organisation at the time that was going through huge amounts of stress, huge amounts of, like all of you, difficulty trying to navigate its way through COVID, errors of judgment and behaviours in a very strained environment that often happens. One thing I said when I came is, we've put in measures in place for people to raise issues of that nature. It's not something that is across, that sort of culture does not span across government. But it is my role, it is the senior leadership's role to make sure that issues of that nature, when they do come up, are dealt with. The people strategy that I talked about will be really important in terms of resetting some of those values and behaviours that we all enjoy across the public sector. And if you work in the public sector, we hold those, very dearly to our hearts. So I do think that was a very isolated incident. But of course, where we do see issues, we do deal with them, and that's through normal HR processes. Yep, another one at the back.
Hi, can I ask you, did you listen to Manx Radio this morning where a local MHK criticised this conference and then said everything should be put through Tim with all the keys? What's your view?
So there's a standard practice in terms of what goes through for decisions and debates in the House of Keys. In terms of staying within budgets and making sure that we have effective savings plans in place is a matter for COMIN. Obviously, if those decisions within the budget affect communities and is of a great national importance, and they would need to go through to Tynwald for discussion, debate, and agreement. So that's all I would say on that matter. But it's somebody's opinion is valid. At the back again.
And Andy, thanks very much. That's all really very interesting. But to cut through it all, I think it's 1 in 4 of the working population are employed by the government. How on earth can that be sustainable in the long term? And what are the plans to reduce the size of government?
So about between, I think it's 22 and 25%. It's comparable just about to other jurisdictions. So public sector is and will remain to be the largest, or if not the largest employer on the island, as it is in other jurisdictions. As I said before, when we look at the shape and size of government, that will determine what we need moving forwards. But as it stands at the moment, one thing I can assure you is we don't have the fat in the system for the amount of work that we're doing for the services we provide. So I don't have anybody, in the public sector that isn't fully occupied. In fact, a lot of people in the public sector work way above their contracted hours. Now, I'm not saying there's not efficiencies. We've already talked about digitisation. We know that there's loads of inefficiencies in our processes which we will need to work through. It's a big oil tanker to turn around. It doesn't happen overnight. But as it stands at the moment, with the services that we provide and the way that we provide them, the civil service numbers are the numbers that we have in order to deliver the outcomes that you require. I think over, yeah, on the right-hand side. Stephen.
Good morning. A question, you've presented an awful lot of detailed challenges and opportunities. What can the wider business community do to get behind those challenges? Because a lot of us would be very supportive of some of the things you've put forward. What can we do to support you to get where you want to go?
So the one thing that we will really need support in, and I'm really focusing on digital here, is the whole piece around AI and business process. I think there's a lot to learn across the private sector and also digital business. I've already been speaking with Digital Isle of Man around, how do we enable AI across government in a safe and measured way. I think the other side of the coin is, and I think it will be really great for you who are staying for the round table, is how can the private sector deliver or support the delivery of some of our services move in the future. And not everything has to be done by the public sector, but we will need to look at efficiencies and economies of scale moving forward. So I think the real two areas for me is, where can you help us deliver services, and also how can you help us support on our journey of digitalisation and AI. And I'm aware that there's lots of incubators happening across the island, and there's other, I'm sure in your own businesses and communities, you're already thinking about some of this stuff, so some collaboration in those areas would be really useful. Thank you, Stephen. I think the gentleman down here as well. Oh, sorry. Well, there as well. That's fine. Go on, Rebecca.
Sorry, Adam. Thank you, Andy, for presenting this morning from a chamber perspective. Delighted to see this. This is, something that we very much support, and I'm glad to hear Stephen's comment about how business can help, and we're happy to have those conversations going forward. Just want to reflect on I think it was back in 2018. There was something called the SAVE project, which was around looking at government savings up to 15 million by 2022-23. I appreciate we then had a pandemic and things got in the way. I just wanted to understand from your perspective if that's been picked up and looked at again, and also where you get the 10 million sort of number from. Okay.
So I'll take it. So I am aware of the SAVE programme, and you're right, it was sort of prior to the pandemic. I think the challenge that we have here is that the way that we manage budgets. Department puts in a bid. The bid is either accepted or rejected through Treasury. Their bid is based on what they believe the service is to be in future years. And if you ask for 20 million and you've got 18, immediately you're going to have to make £2 million worth of savings. So I think the challenge that we have, so the SAVE programme delivered some efficiencies, probably not all, fair to say, but departments were having to deliver efficiencies anyway. So you have to be really careful about the double counting. The 10 million... or 10 million or above is a reasonable figure to assume if you take healthcare spending out of the equation, is a reasonable assumption for us to start thinking about. So you would notice a minimum of 10. I think the problem is you overcommit. The danger is you can't deliver. So I think this is the role for Chief Officer Group now to look at all those opportunities, look at digitalisation, look at procurement, look at the way that we work, look at all the opportunities that we have. There will have to be some questions around provision of services and how those are services, the service levels that we have. We all know that we've got a tighter financial envelope, so we have to cut our cloth according to our means. But before we do any of that, we need to make sure we're efficient in government, and that's my role, Chief Officer Group's role, to be able to demonstrate that what we do is value for money and cost effective and efficient. Thank you. Adam.
So, as of a couple of years ago, schools were saying around 80% of A-level leavers were heading off to university. Now, there's been talk the past couple of days about using homegrown talent, and in Minister Allinson's presentation earlier about how there's about 3 times the number of vacancies as there are unemployed people. What is the government doing to help bring these students back, especially given that the cost of living over here is 30% higher than over in the UK, and students are just being almost headhunted from degrees in the UK?
So I'm afraid I'm not really able to answer that question, but I will get an answer for you and come back if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, one more question, I've been told. Over there, at the back there. Okay.
Hi, my name's Jennifer. I'd like to ask a question about Manx Care Plan that was put forward in last year's conference. It looked like it had been very carefully thought through, well presented, and really logical. Is there a follow-up? Because my experience within the Manx Care hasn't actually reflected that plan yet, and it had stages that were presented. Are you aware of that plan?
Again, I'm sorry, but I really can't answer that question. It's something really for Manx Care, but again, we'll take a note of that and come back to you. Okay, I think that concludes the questions. I'll be around for the remaining part of the day. I'm quite happy to take comments, feedback, and any questions that you have. I don't have a Treasury board to go to, so you'll be pleased to know.